Order number 1, administration of oath. Order number 2, communication from the chair. Order number 3, messages. Order number 4, petitions. Order number 5, papers.
Order, honorable members, there are about 3-4 petitions that are approved to be delivered on the floor. Clerk, where are they? Okay, go on. Next, clerk.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following papers on the table of the House today, Wednesday, March 1st, 2023, in the afternoon sitting. Number 1, special audit reports of the Auditor General on stabilization of refined petroleum pump prices for the period between 1st April 2021 and 30th June 2022 from the Ministry of Petroleum and Mining. Number 2, reports of the Auditor General and financial statements in respect of the following institutions for the year ended 2021 and the certificates therein. A, Pest Control Products Board. B, Chemelil Sugar Company Limited. C, Gatundu South Technical and Vocational College. D, Kenya Agricultural and Livestock Research Organization. Kenyatta International Convention Center. Chanzeriwe Technical and Vocational College. Wanga Technical and College and Vocational College. Koitalel Samoei University College. Sigala Gala National Polytechnic, Nakuru Rural Water and Sanitation Company Limited, Ikuda Technical and Vocational College, Kenya Water Institute, Eldoret National Polytechnic, Simlo Seed Company Limited, and David Mbiti Wambui Technical and Vocational College. Honorable Speaker, the reports of the Auditor General and financial statements in respect of the following constituencies for the year ended 2021 and the certificates therein. Ndaragwa, Kilome, Masinga, Kaiti, Kadhiani, Mboni, and Baringo North. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Member for Nairobi, on behalf of the delegation to the Pan-African Parliament, Esther Passaris.
Yes, sir. Yes, Mr. Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the House today, Wednesday, 1st March 2023. The report of the Kenya delegation to the Pan-African Parliament, PAP, on the proceedings of the first ordinary session of the 6th Parliament.
Chairperson, Departmental Committee on Justice and Legal Affairs.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, allow me to lay the following paper on the table of the House today, Wednesday, March 1st, 2023. A report of the Departmental Committee on Justice and Legal Affairs on the vetting of a nominee for appointment as the Solicitor General of the Republic of Kenya. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Next order.
Order number 6, notices of motion.
Esther Passaris.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to give notice of the following motion, that this House notes the report of the Kenya delegation to the Pan-African Parliament, PAP, on the proceedings of the first ordinary session of the 6th Parliament laid on the table of the House on Wednesday, 1st March 2023.
Murugara.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, allow me to give notice of the following motion: appointment of a Solicitor General. That taking into consideration the findings of the Departmental Committee on Justice and Legal Affairs in its report on the vetting of a nominee for the appointment as a Solicitor General of the Republic of Kenya, laid on the table of the House on Wednesday, 1st March 2023, and pursuant to the provisions of Section 9 of the Office of the Attorney General 2012 and Section 8(2) of the Public Appointments Parliamentary Approval Act 2011, approves the appointment of Honorable Shadrach John Mose as the Solicitor General of the Republic of Kenya. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Mngalio, is he in the House? I had approved your motion of adjournment. Are you ready to, you know what to do? I'll go to the next order and come back to you as soon as we're done. Liaise with the clerks. And when you send documents to Mr. Speaker, you should retain your copies.
Order number 7, questions and statements.
After questions and statements, I'll give you an opportunity. Yes. Yes. The member for Kirinyaga, Honorable Jane Njeri Maina.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Honorable Speaker, pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 44.2c, I wish to request for a statement from the Chairperson of the Departmental Committee on Administration and Internal Affairs regarding the alleged murder by Nyumba Kumi officials in Gategi area in Kirinyaga County. Honorable Speaker, the national government, through the Executive Order of 2013, introduced the Nyumba Kumi initiative to institutionalize community policing and enhance security and safety at the basic level of the society. The initiative draws its membership from the general public, which includes the public officials and the private sector. They were tasked with oversight of community activities with a view to helping the government address prevalence of crime, insecurity, and undertake other development initiatives in the communities. Honorable Speaker, it is unfortunate that on 5th February 2023, two brothers, namely Joseph Ndungu, of ID number 259-82017, and Kennedy Gitau, of ID number 313-77497, residents of Kewanyeki village in Kirinyaga County, were brutally murdered at Gategi area on the Kirinyaga-Embu County border. It is alleged that the perpetrators of these heinous acts are openly known to be members of the Nyumba Kumi initiative. It is ironic that the lives of these brothers were lost at the hands of persons who ought to protect them and provide security in the community. Honorable Speaker, it is against this backdrop that I seek a statement from the Chairperson of the Department Committee on Administration and Internal Affairs on the following. Number 1, could the Chairperson explain the mechanisms in place to monitor the operations and activities of the Nyumba Kumi initiative and their officials within their areas of work and steps being taken to ensure that they do not overstep their mandate? Number 2, what measures have been taken by the government to expedite investigations into the heinous killings of the two brothers, avert any extrajudicial killings of innocent people, and curb insecurity in that area? Number 3, what is the status of investigations into the killing of the two brothers, and have the culprits been arrested? Number 4, could the Chairperson outline the steps that the government intends to take to compensate the family of the deceased brothers who are the sole providers to their family? Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
member, the Chair, Departmental Committee on Administration and Internal Affairs should pick up that. Honorable Mulyungi. Honorable Gideon Mulyungi. Question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, I would like to, I beg to move the following.
You are not
motion.
moving anything. You're asking a question.
No, I have a
What
motion.
I have, and I've called you for, is a question. And we
Okay,
are,
I also had a motion.
Order,
Maybe it has
Honorable
not-
Mulyungi, if you are following the proceedings, we have already finished moving motions and giving notices. We are on questions. And the reason I've called you is because you have a question
Okay,
to
I have
the
a question.
Cabinet Secretary of Education.
Yes, I have a question.
That's what I called you for.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Speaker, for your guidance. Mr. Speaker, I would like to ask question number 01 of 2023 to the Cabinet Secretary for Education. Number 1, could the Cabinet Secretary provide a list of schools approved and designated as junior secondary school centers in Mwingi Central constituency? Number 2, what measures has the ministry instituted to improve the quality of education and the performance in the constituency? Number 3, considering that Mwingi Central constituency is currently experiencing drought following the failure of long rains, could the ministry consider a free school feeding program in schools in the constituency with a view to ensuring that children attend school? Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Chair, Departmental Committee on Education. It's a question by private notice, so an answer should be brought as quickly as is practically possible, if possible tomorrow or Tuesday. Who is the chair? Where is any member of the committee? Yes, Mama Tongei, you inform your chair to bring the answer on Tuesday. Honorable Peter Nabulindo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I beg to ask the Cabinet Secretary for Agriculture and Livestock Development the following question. Could the Cabinet Secretary explain why over 500 former employees of Mias Sugar Company whose contracts were terminated have not been paid their dues totaling to 2.3 billion from May 2017 to date? Secondly, what steps has the ministry taken to ensure that the said former employees receive their dues, including arrears, without any further delay? And finally, could the Cabinet Secretary explain why the said former employees of Mias Sugar Company who occupies the company's houses were served with eviction orders in September 2021 by the Sarai Group, who are the investors right now, despite court orders stopping their eviction until they have been paid their dues? The question is to replied by the Minister of Agriculture and Livestock. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Chair, Committee on Agriculture and Livestock. Are you in the House? Convey that to the chair. Member for Kiambu, Mashua Waithaka. Is there a constituency called Kiambu? Kiambu Town?
Kiambu Town.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, give me this opportunity. I would like to ask the Cabinet Secretary for Roads and Transport the following question. Could the Cabinet Secretary provide a report of the infrastructural development plans that the ministry has put in place to expand Kiambu Road into a dual carriageway in a bid to ease the heavy traffic snaps experienced along the said road? Number two, could the Cabinet Secretary state the timelines within which the said plans will be implemented to bear fruit and save the country the many man-hours currently wasted in traffic? I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
That question goes to the Chair, Departmental Committee on Transport and Infrastructure. Is the Chair in the House? Any member of the committee will communicate to your Chair. Member for Taraka, George Murugara.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Allow me to ask question number 6 of 2023, directed to the Teacher Service Commission. Could the Commission, number 1, explain why the Curriculum Support Officers, popularly known as CSOs, are managed by the Teacher Service Commission in the same manner as teachers, yet they are technical support. They offer technical support. Number 2, state why the said officers are graded at a lower cadre of the secretariat staff in the organogram of TSC Secretariat. Number 3, state the reason why CSOs have never been promoted since the time of engagement and first deployment by the TSC, despite the existence of career progression guidelines of 2019. And number 4, what plans has the Commission instituted to promote, facilitate, and equip CSOs? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chair, Committee on Education, or any member thereof, inform your Chair, Ms. Tonke. Member for Mhaya, Mboko Milemba.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I rise to ask question number 007 of 2023 to the Cabinet Secretary for Education again. Could the Cabinet Secretary state when the contractors who constructed classrooms meant for junior secondary school learners in various schools countrywide will be paid, and whether they will be compensated for the delayed payment? Number 2, what plans has the ministry put in place to ensure that suppliers of goods and services are paid promptly within the contract period in order to reduce the ever-rising pending bills owed by the government and particularly the Ministry of Education? 3, could the Cabinet Secretary explain why the ministry is yet to certify certain institutions to host junior secondary school, JSS, to address inadequacy of junior secondary schools and state measures put in place to ensure 100% transition from primary to junior secondary school is achieved? And number 4, what action has the ministry taken regarding extra charges being levied by junior secondary schools, including but not limited to purchase of new uniforms? Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Chair, Committee on Education. Any member thereof? Education, inform your Chair. Next, member from Mwingi North, Paul Zengu.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I raise to ask a question number 008 of 2023 to the Cabinet Secretary for Roads and Transport. Could the Cabinet Secretary state when the contractor awarded tender number KAA stroke 0T stroke Sekuru stroke 0119 stroke 2021-2022 for the construction of Sekuru Airstrip is expected to be on site for the commencement of the work on the said project? And number 2 of that question is, what is the expected date of completion of the said project? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chair, Departmental Committee on Transport and Infrastructure. Any member thereof to inform your chair of the question. Next, member for Teso North, Oku Kaunya. Member for Teso North, Oku Kaunya. Question dropped. We go back to Honorable Mwalio.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I stand under Standing Order number 33 to request for an adjournment motion, aware of the great public interest and national concern that the lesbian and gay, bisexual, transgender, intersex, and queers, LGBTIQ, has attracted, and noting the impact the matter has on the youth and the vulnerable persons in our society, I hereby request your office to schedule time to discuss the matter on the floor of the House. I wish to seek leave to have the matter considered this afternoon. I thank you, Speaker.
Do you have the requisite support by 20 members?
Yes. We are supporting. Yes, we are supporting. Yes.
Order.
Yes.
Thank you.
Order, honorable members. Order, you may take your seats. Order, you may take your seats, honorable members. You may take your seats. Yes. Order, honorable members. Honorable members, that is order. Order, honorable members. Can you reserve your excitement to the motion time? Honorable members, the support for the request by Honorable Mwalio is overwhelming, and the chair will avail you time, 1 hour to the end of time, but depending on how we run our business of the day, there is coming appropriations bill, which is a mirror of the motion that you passed yesterday. If you plow through the appropriations bill faster than we expect, then I will give you much more time than 1 hour to debate this very important national issue. So in the event business goes on, 1 hour to the end of time, we'll stop and invite the Honorable Mwalio to move the House. In case we finish earlier, I'll give him the time at the time we stop. Next order.
Order number 8, procedural motion, reduction of publication period of a bill.
The Chair, Budgets and Appropriations Committee.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'm moving a procedural motion on the reduction of publication period of a bill that, pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 120, that this House resolves to reduce the publication period of the Supplementary Appropriations Bill, National Assembly Bill number 4 of 2023, from 7 days to 1 day, Mr. Speaker. And the reason for this, Mr. Speaker, is that yesterday we extensively debated the supplementary estimates. We will actually also have an opportunity to do that today as we move the appropriations bill. But the reason for reduction Mr. Speaker, is that the majority of members who belong to various departmental committees have been interacting with the various MDAs that they oversight. And Mr. Speaker, the urgency that has come from these committees is that majority of these MDAs currently are idle. And therefore we need to unlock the resources, number one, to action them to continue offering service to the Kenyan people, but also number two, Mr. Speaker, that this appropriations bill that we are moving today, Mr. Speaker, is unlocking a lot of money that would otherwise be going around in terms of in the pockets of the Kenyan people by unlocking, for example, the pending bills. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I am seeking that this House, that we reduce the publication period from the usual 7 days to 1 day, because members already have interacted with the content of the appropriations bill, and therefore, Mr. Speaker, my prayer. And I request Honorable Atadi to second.
Andy?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I second. And Honorable Speaker, let me just add something on top of what the Chair of Budget has said. Chair, Speaker, we have about 3 months to the end of this financial year. And Chair, you realize that we have already started discussing BPS. And we need, first of all, to do away with this, clear this supplementary budget, and then we can now focus on BPS. And secondly, Chair, Speaker, you're aware that the country is facing a lot of problems, especially the drought issues. Some of the resources that we have placed in this supplementary budget are going to help our people in the areas of drought, and also the insecurity in the North Rift. So, Chair, these are some of the reasons that we feel this publication needs to be reduced to 1 day, and I second. Thank you.
Order, honorable members, I propose the question. Interest in debating this. I'll put the question, which is that pursuant to the provision of Standing Order 120, this House resolves to reduce the publication period of the Supplementary Appropriation Bill, National Assembly Bill number 4 of 2023, from 7 days to 1 day. Will as members of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will those of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Next order. Yes, Honorable Dr. Nyikal, what is out of order?
Mr. Speaker, thank you for giving me opportunity. I want to raise a matter which I believe is really important for this House. Mr. Speaker, we have no access from the main Parliament building to the Continental House offices. The route which we used to go through the police now is restricted. Through County Hall, it is restricted. Now members have to go all the way to Professional Center. And it does look to me like the gate across is ready and we go through. So, Mr. Speaker, I think me and I believe other people must be feeling the stress of having to walk all the way back and forth. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Is the Honorable Patrick Makar in the House? I direct you as the Chair of Development Issues in the Commission to ensure that members are not inconvenienced in going to their offices, going to the gym, and going to Continental House.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I'm quite sorry what happened this afternoon. I've just received the same complaints from Honorable Wangwe. And Mr. Chair, I spoke to the security manager of the institution, and we have agreed that there was a security itch yesterday, and that's why it was locked. But we have agreed this afternoon that gate that we used to use going to Continental House will be opened and availed to members of Parliament. There will be a guard. So, Honorable Nyikal and all members, from today, this afternoon, and tomorrow, it will be easy and accessible for you.
Thank you. Next order.
Order number 9, the Supplementary Appropriation Bill, National Assembly Bill number 4 of 2023, first reading. A bill for an Act of Parliament to authorize the issue of certain sums of money out of the Consolidated Fund and their application towards the service of the year ending on the 30th June 2023, and to appropriate those sums for certain public services and purposes.
Next order.
Order number 10, the Supplementary Appropriation Bill, National Assembly Bill number 4 of 2023, second reading.
Chairman, Budget and Appropriations Committee.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I rise to move the Supplementary Appropriations Bill, National Assembly Bill number 4 of 2023. Mr. Speaker, first of all, I want to thank the members for the very robust engagement that we had yesterday in considering the estimates. And because, Mr. Speaker, even prior to having an opportunity to serve in the Budget and Appropriations Committee, possibly I could also not understand a lot of what happens in terms of processes. And some members could be wondering, then what is it that we passed yesterday and what are we doing today? Mr. Speaker, what we passed yesterday are the estimates, and for that to become now law, Mr. Speaker, we need to put it in a bill, which, as you said earlier, Mr. Speaker, it is just the reflection of the issues that we were discussing yesterday. There are no changes other than semantics, but we need now to actualize that by putting it into an appropriations bill, and that is the bill that we are, Mr. Speaker, dealing with today. Mr. Speaker, I'll just say a few things because we had an opportunity to say much more yesterday, so that even the time that could be there, other members who never got an opportunity yesterday can get an opportunity to say something about the supplementary estimates and supplementary appropriations bill today. Number one, Mr. Speaker, is that in this administration, and even as we craft the budget, as the house that makes the budget, we are focusing more on production. Mr. Speaker, for us to be able to solve the myriad of problems that our economy is going through, Mr. Speaker, our focus must be on production. And the way we are looking at production as the Budget and Appropriations Committee, and Mr. Speaker, even what we have been able to table in this House and what we are currently debating today, our focus has primarily been on production. And Mr. Speaker, on production, on the onset, we are focusing on the primary production, and the primary production is that what deals with raw materials and production of things that are raw in nature. And Mr. Speaker, that is why we have given a lot of resources and a lot of weight in production based in agriculture. And Mr. Speaker, I would request that members improve upon this issue in a robust manner. When we talk about agriculture, sometimes we confuse agriculture with farming. Mr. Speaker, in the agricultural value chain, farming accounts for just around 20 to 25%. The activities that farmers do in their farms, sometimes we confuse that to agriculture. That is just one segment within the value chain of agriculture, which is purely farming. And Mr. Speaker, there are other processes within the value chain of agriculture. Warehousing is part of agriculture. Transportation is part of agriculture. Breeding and blending is part of agriculture. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, our focus is on the entire value chain so that we can have as much value being retained around in terms of within the country, and especially having a lot of value pushed to where the farmer is, so that, Mr. Speaker, the farmer's sweat and the farmer's hard work, that can be commensurated with the kind of value they get out of farming, which is within the value chain of agriculture. Mr. Speaker, also, our focus number two is on the secondary production. The secondary production, Mr. Speaker, is in regards to adding value to whatever we have, whatever raw material that we have, whatever raw production that we do, in terms of how we can add value into that. And Mr. Speaker, that is primarily manufacturing. Manufacturing has various stages, but you have looked at it as a block, Mr. Speaker, from very basic production in terms of secondary production within manufacturing to as much as robust, Mr. Speaker. And that is why, Mr. Speaker, our focus is on how, even as we add value in terms of primary production, how much more value can we retain by also incorporating secondary production, Mr. Speaker, that is purely manufacturing in nature. The other one is tertiary, and tertiary, Mr. Speaker, is in regards to the services around the first two that I gave. And Mr. Speaker, I wish to draw the attention of this House to how our economy currently is. Our economy, as it currently operates, Mr. Speaker, is that the drivers of our economy is actually the public sector. It is the government. And the other number two, Mr. Speaker, the driver of our economy is what I would call facilitative arm of the economy, where if you look at the growth on fintech, the growth in service industry, Mr. Speaker, we have had now the productive side leapfrogging the facilitative side, where we have very innovative people. We have banks now that are now in our phones. We have very robust fintech products like M-Pesa. We have a growing service sector in terms of insurance, in terms of banking. But, Mr. Speaker, we have to be aware of the fact that the facilitative side of the economy should serve the productive side. And when we have the facilitative side of the economy growing much faster than the real productive side, then there is a problem. Because, Mr. Speaker, when I send money from my phone to the other person, there is no value I create. The only thing I do, or that app does, is to facilitate efficiency within the economy. And therefore, we need to also focus on the real production. And that production is what we have focused on in terms of agriculture, in terms of manufacturing, so that the facilitative side can grow in tandem with the real productive side of the economy. And what we have done, Mr. Speaker, in regards to that, is that we have also looked at the enablers. As we talk about production, as we talk about adding value to our gross production, what are the enablers? And that is the reason why, Mr. Speaker, we were able to salvage 10 billion Kenya shillings from whatever area we could save to push that money into roads so that we can have the economy running smoothly. Because the essence of roads, Mr. Speaker, is not just for social travel. The essence of road and other infrastructure is that the economy runs on them. And, Mr. Speaker, that is why we put money onto the roads. Because whatever we carry from our farms, whatever we carry from our industries, majority of it, Mr. Speaker, passes through our roads. And that is the same reason that we unlocked 12 billion Kenya shillings from the annuity fund, so that we can push the same resources into making sure that the contractors go back to site to finish on our roads projects. Mr. Speaker, the reason why we exist as this House, as an arm of government, and the other reason that every other civil servant exists, from the highest to the top, to those at the lower cadre, we do not exist to serve the machinery of government. The machinery of government does not exist to self-serve. This machinery exists to serve the needs of the Kenyan people. And that is why, Mr. Speaker, we are focusing on having a lean government, because the government is the machinery for service, so that we can push as much resources into the areas that touches on the common person, the people who labor, the people, Mr. Speaker, who work hard, and the people who pay taxes, the very dignified citizens of the Republic of Kenya. And in that regard, Mr. Speaker, we have looked at specific areas and targets. And I want to enumerate some of them that are already in the appropriations bill, Mr. Speaker, that we are passing today. Number one, Mr. Speaker, is that through this appropriations bill, we are unlocking a very robust project, which is the coolers project. And these coolers, Mr. Speaker, they have been mapped to go to every constituency represented here, and especially every constituency that has got dairy farming that happens in those constituencies. Mr. Speaker, we have allocated Kenya shillings 500 million, which is counterpart funding, because we have the Polish government providing 9.5 billion to that project, Mr. Speaker, and therefore we are going to have a 10 billion project that will supply coolers to our farmers, as part of value addition within the agricultural value chain. Mr. Speaker, this is a very robust program. The government of Kenya, through this appropriations bill, is only contributing 5% counterpart funding, which is already provided. Number two, some of the areas that I wish to mention among the many. Mr. Speaker, through food security, it is a shame that our economy is agrarian in nature. If you ask any child in any business class, even in class 1, our economy is deemed to be an economy that rides on agriculture. Mr. Speaker, it is an oxymoron and a paradox that an economy that is based on agriculture has challenges in feeding its people. And Mr. Speaker, this cuts across many economies across. Majority of the economies that are premised on agriculture has problems feeding their people. And actually the economies that focuses on other productions other than agriculture, their people have problems of overfeeding. Mr. Speaker, that is a paradox. And to reverse that paradox, Mr. Speaker, we have pushed resources into specific areas within food production. Number one, there is a project that had been abandoned in Tana River, Mr. Speaker, undertaken by TARDA. Mr. Speaker, we have allocated 500 million Kenya shillings that will go into production of rice, because there is no way we can perpetuate importation of rice when we have capacity to unlock the projects that we already have in that regard. Mr. Speaker, through this appropriations bill also, we have unlocked another very serious project, which is called Bura 1. This is also an abandoned project, which we have pushed 300 million Kenya shillings to be able to activate that project, Mr. Speaker, to spur up rice production in our country. That rice production, Mr. Speaker, will also be happening in Tana River. And I want to confirm to this House that within our country, some of the areas that we see as far-flung, Mr. Speaker, they could be the saviors of our country, just like what Los Angeles did to the US. Mr. Speaker, some of these areas are productive. They only need some simple mechanization for them to add into the basket, and especially the basket of food. Mr. Speaker, I also wish to mention one other project that the President of Kenya, His Excellency William Samoei Ruto, promised to the people of Kisumu and Homa Bay. Mr. Speaker, there are always challenges when the very dignified citizens of Kenya move from the mainland into the islands, Mr. Speaker, within Lake Victoria. They have challenges with very unsafe boats. Mr. Speaker, the President promised that the people of that area will have a ferry to be able to facilitate them, Mr. Speaker, to move from the mainland into the islands. And Mr. Speaker, I can confirm to this House that through this appropriations bill, we have allocated Kenya shillings 300 million for the purchase of ferries, Mr. Speaker, to be able to facilitate trade and movement within Homa Bay and Kisumu counties through Lake Victoria. Mr. Speaker, through the same visit that the President had, he got, Mr. Speaker, opinions from the leaders who are actually in this House. And I want to confirm that we have put in the initial budget to be able to build Homa Bay Kapude airstrip, Mr. Speaker. And that will also be starting very soon, because that money is already in the appropriations bill. And I can say Dr. Nikal is resonating with what I'm enumerating. Mr. Speaker, also, in terms of creating value by having the young people of Kenya engaged in productive areas, we have also allocated through this appropriations bill Kenya shillings 1.3 billion, Mr. Speaker, to be able to facilitate additional infrastructure within Athi River EPZ-A. Mr. Speaker, we already have many investors lined up who are willing to invest in garment and apparel sector. And Mr. Speaker, you know for sure that the economies that have actually advanced even up to now, their basis of manufacturing was the basic manufacturing. And basic manufacturing, Mr. Speaker, cuts across apparels, garments, and areas around clothing. And Mr. Speaker, we have facilitated EPZ to build more sheds for the investors who are already lined up to employ the majority of the Kenyan youth who will be engaged in those EPZ sheds. Mr. Speaker, just for the clarification for members who were not here yesterday, I want to reinforce that we have been in talks with the Treasury, and they have already released Kenya shillings 14 billion to NGCDF board. Mr. Speaker, by close of this week, we anticipate that every constituency should be having no less than 45 million to be able to disburse bursaries. And in that regard, Mr. Speaker, I'll talk about GAF. I can hear lovely voices from the very able women reps. I'll talk about it. In this appropriations bill, Mr. Speaker, we have also added two things in regards to NGCDF and GAF. And starting with GAF, the women reps in this house, they are very aware that their activities have been handicapped in the past because of coordinators and because the monies that are already provided, we needed some funds to unlock that money. We have provided enough money for that in that regard, in terms of coordinators and in terms of facilitating the unlocking of the monies that are already provided in the main budget. That has already happened through this appropriations bill. And in regards to NGCDF, Mr. Speaker, there are over 200 constituencies which have arrears for the last financial year to a tune of 12 million per constituency. Mr. Speaker, through this appropriations bill, when the President assents to it by Friday, we are going to unlock the 12 million per constituency which are in arrears, and they should be paid anytime after the assent of this bill by His Excellency the President. We have provided Kenya shillings 2.9 billion in that regard, and we have actually factored in entirety the entire arrears in terms of NGCDF. Mr. Speaker, as I come to the finish, the other very important matters that we have done, I talked about the teachers yesterday. We have passed Article 223 expenditure in regards to the teachers' recruitment, which is ongoing in terms of JSS, junior secondary schools. And we have also allocated, Mr. Speaker, through this appropriations bill, an additional 9 billion Kenya shillings for capitation for JSS. And we have done this because the essence of JSS and CBC is that we do not want to push the burden to parents. And the President gave us direct commitments that he wants the JSS learners and the parents not to carry extra burden. And therefore, the government is capitalizing every learner through capitation, monies that we have already input in this appropriations bill to a tune of 9 billion Kenya shillings. Mr. Speaker, there are many other areas which I will leave for the members to get an opportunity to comment on, and I wish to move, Mr. Speaker, and if you permit, I can call the seconder. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I want to request Honorable Dan Mwashako to second this appropriations bill.
Honorable Mwashako.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for the opportunity to second this appropriation bill. Honorable Speaker, I first want to say that we know at the moment there is so little activity going on in the country, because without government spending, Kenya money in circulation as a country, it is depressed, Honorable Speaker. And therefore, Speaker, I am glad that this afternoon we have an opportunity to debate and even conclude on this supplementary bill that will unlock funding to government projects, that will unlock funding to MDAs, so that government can implement projects that in the same as the implement project, Honorable Speaker, will have an opportunity to have money in circulation, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, my chair has done justice to this topic. I want to say, Honorable Speaker, that this supplementary budget of this first supplementary budget under the new administration has taken care of about 3 items that are so important where the country is at the moment. Honorable Speaker, there is 6 billion shillings that has been allocated to go into drought mitigation, which at the moment, you know, the situation the country is facing. We have almost every corner of this country, we have drought, that is ravaging every area, and Kenyans are suffering because they're not able to do their normal, get the normal food, and even the food baskets have been affected. So this 6 billion, Honorable Speaker, has been allocated for food relief. Some of us come from ASAL areas, Honorable Speaker, and therefore we are calling upon government. The immediate, this supplementary budget is passed and signed into law, we expect that suffering Kenyans need to get this food, and therefore all the apparatus of government that are concerned in the distribution must move in fast to save lives, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, we know the confusion that is going on right now under junior secondary. This supplementary budget has allocated 9.2 billion shillings to go and sort out the mess we find in the junior secondary space, Honorable Speaker. And therefore, Honorable Speaker, we know capitation in this country for our students in schools. In primary school, definitely this capitation is very little. But now that junior secondary is domiciled in primary schools, we expect now even the primary school to now have sufficient funds, Honorable Speaker, to make them viable, Honorable Speaker. Because we have primary schools, Honorable Speaker, that have very low enrollment. And therefore, the little money they receive under primary school capitation is never enough to run the schools, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, without saying much, Honorable Speaker, I want to say that the most important thing that this government needs to give us is value for money. And therefore, we want to call upon all the implementation agencies and ministries to make sure that every coin that this August House appropriates is used according to what is envisaged in this appropriation bill, Honorable Speaker. We know that there's been a lot of wastage, we know there's been corruption, and therefore, Honorable Speaker, for Kenyans to get value for the money that this House is appropriating, we are calling upon all the implementation agencies and everyone, every stakeholder who is involved in running projects and programs of government to make sure that they give value to Kenyans, to make sure that they minimize wastage, and make sure that they do everything above board, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, as I sit, I'm also excited about the opportunity that this appropriation bill gives to CDF, the money that has been allocated to CDF. I know the arrears, most constituencies had arrears for the last financial year, 2021-2022. And now that 2.9 billion has been allocated to go into unlocking the arrears under NGCDF, it's something that is welcomed. And I know women reps are also excited about the money that is in this appropriation bill. And therefore, as a country, I know now we are set to move 4 months to the next, about 3 months to the next budget. The only thing that we call upon, Honorable Speaker, in the next budget as a House, we must be asking ourselves how balanced these budgets are, so that then we achieve what we call a balanced growth across the country, Honorable Speaker. With those many words, Honorable Speaker, I stand to second. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable. Before I propose the question, Honorable members, I wish to acknowledge in the public gallery the presence of students from Mwiki Primary School, Ruiru in Kiambu, students from Molo Academy Boys Secondary School, Molo in Nakuru. On your behalf and on my own behalf, I welcome the students to the House of Parliament. Honorable members, I now propose the question. Order, Honorable Atandi. Honorable Atandi. I propose the question that the Supplementary Appropriation Bill, National Assembly Bill number 4 of 2023, be now read a second time. Do you want to debate or to put the question? I've noted the mood. Let me hear your leaders, then I put the question. Wandai.
Mr. Speaker, I agree with you that the mood of the House is fairly clear. But that notwithstanding, let me just add 1 or 2 words to this debate. Mr. Speaker, this bill is obviously a matter of, if you ask me, a formality. That for you to give effect to the supplementary estimates, you must actually pass this bill. Otherwise, the approval of the estimates becomes something done in vain. And therefore, I will support it. But Mr. Speaker, there is something we need to take more seriously. Because I listened keenly to the chairman talk about value addition and manufacturing and supportive sectors and so on and so forth. And I agree with him. But we must, as a matter of priority going forward, even as we pass this bill, look at the issue of the cost of energy in this country. Because unless we address the issue of the cost of energy, we shall never make any progress in terms of developing our manufacturing sector. As we speak, it is almost common knowledge that the energy sector has been captured by cartels. Cartels that are little, Mr. Speaker. Little. And these cartels have been able to transit from one regime to another, to another, and to another. I would be surprised that as we speak, they have already captured this new regime. I wouldn't be surprised. I'm not saying I've got evidence, but I wouldn't be surprised. These cartels are dangerous creatures. And therefore, as a house, we must gather the courage to deal with them once and for all, if only to rein in the spiraling cost of energy. There is no way we are ever going to be competitive as a country vis-a-vis other countries. You remember the other day, in fact yesterday, there was a demonstration, massive demonstration, by Kenyan traders. And they are right. Those Kenyan traders were right to demonstrate. But we must go to the root cause of their demonstration. Their demonstration is not just about Chinese. It is because of the fact that even if they are to sell the goods they have brought from China, there is no way they are going to make money if the cost of energy remains the way it is. In a sense, energy determines everything else. The cost of energy determines everything else in the economy. And therefore, even as we condemn the Chinese, also let's look inwards. Yes, let's look inwards and see where we have contributed to this mess. And I'm happy Honorable Gikaria is agreeing with me, the chairman of Energy Emeritus. Yes, the cartels in the energy sector must be dealt with ruthlessly. I am aware that there are managers and players and people in the energy sagas who are doing what you would call the internal trading. They are doing business irregularly with their entities. And very soon I'll be tabling reports here, damning reports. No, these days I'm happy, Mr. Speaker, that my office has been fully capacitated, is fully enabled to undertake very serious exercises, including forensic audits, Mr. Speaker. Very soon I'll be tabling damning reports here on how people who are in charge of these energy sagas are doing business regularly with those very sagas. They are basically part of the cartels I'm talking about. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, we must also actually understand that those Chinese companies, like the one you're talking about on Thika Road, they're just the faces. The real owners, you know, are Kenyans. The real owners are Kenyans, and some of them are even here in this house. Yes, Mr. Speaker, with those very many remarks, I support. Thank you. Yes. Yes.
Thank you, Honorable Wandai. I now give to the majority leader.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Maybe just to correct Honorable Pio Wandai, the people demonstrating yesterday over Chinese issues are not on things being manufactured in Kenya. It is unfair trade practices by Chinese business people who have refused Kenyans access to the Chinese market and allowed the Chinese to have unfettered access into the Kenyan market. And I want to inform the Honorable Leader of Minority that the government of Kenya is well apprised of the issue. This morning we had a meeting with representatives of the Nyamakima River Road traders, that was chaired by none other than the Deputy President and included all agencies of government, including KEBS, KRA, Anti-Counterfeit Authority, and all other relevant agencies. And government is working hard to look into solutions to that issue. Honorable Speaker, we did pass the Budget and Appropriations Report yesterday, which is now what has enabled us to prepare this appropriations bill. And there isn't much that we can say other than what we said yesterday in terms of the budget making process and approval of this appropriations bill. Upon passage of this bill, Honorable Speaker, we shall be able now to access the monies as and when His Excellency the President assents to the bill to become the Appropriations Act of Supplementary 1. And governments, agencies and departments and ministries will now be able to access funds to be able to spur the economic growth that we were speaking about yesterday. But significantly, Honorable Speaker, yesterday as we passed the report, there was also reports of the cabinet meeting of yesterday morning. And I have seen a number of media houses misreport a resolution by cabinet. And because we are the budget-making house, we have a responsibility to correct misreporting by the media. And Honorable Speaker, some of these media houses have become notorious. This afternoon, the Chief Whip has just tabled reports of the Auditor General and financial statements in respect of a number of constituencies for the financial year ended 2021. Let me just say this, Honorable Speaker, with your indulgence, because we have a number of new members of Parliament whose first audit reports will be tabled before this House, hopefully by mid next year, after the audits that will be done after you are taking office. Please, don't allow yourself to be blackmailed or to be intimidated by any person in the media. On occasion, some of them are calling members of Parliament, oh, we have seen an audit report of your NGCDF committee. I can see already members nodding, so a number of them have been called. And there are issues that you need to talk to us about. Members of Parliament are not accounting officers of NGCDF, and they have no business. If there are issues to do with the audit of NGCDF, those are issues to be dealt with by the accounting officers that are the fund account managers in your respective constituencies. Therefore, don't allow some of these cheap media houses to blackmail you for small bribes so that they don't. Tell them, like I told the one who was approaching some members, I told them, go put it on your headline in your funny newspaper that you don't even sell, you distribute for free. Anyway, Honorable Speaker, I was on the media because the same media house today is misreporting the resolution by cabinet of coming up with a debt anchor and misreporting that the government of Kenya now is raising the debt ceiling. And far from it, I don't know whether it's because the writer does not understand that the debt anchor simply relates to a debt to GDP ratio that defines the optimal or desirable debt carrying capacity of an economy. And it's that simple. And we are saying our debt carrying capacity, our optimal or desired debt carrying capacity, will now be anchored at 55% of GDP in net present value terms. Maybe it's too much economics for some of these writers and journalists, but I would encourage them. And allow me, Mr. Speaker, to mention the People newspaper, because it is the People newspaper I am talking about. They either MediaMax, the same media house that has the famed Kamehameha FM, that the other day was fighting Our Lady members of Parliament, telling them that they are wearing vitenges.
Honorable Andai, what is the problem?
He wants to defend.
The Speaker just need your guidance on this. No, Chunga is my friend. But then, you know, under the standing orders, we are not supposed to impute improper motive on persons who cannot have the chance to defend themselves for this House without following the normal process. And you know, newspapers, media houses are legal persons, the Speaker. And therefore, would I be in order to ask that you ask the Honorable Leader of Majority to approach this matter in the correct manner by following the standing orders as clearly indicated there. Thanks.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I understand the Leader of Minority has to defend the ownership of that particular media house. and the persons who own it by virtue of the owners being the chairman or outgoing chairman of the Azimio Council of Elders or something like that. But truth be told, if a journalist in a media house doesn't understand simple things, let us just use this opportunity on the floor of Parliament, because we have some fiduciary duty also to put things in the right perspective.
You've made your point. Go to
And
the
therefore, Honorable Speaker, I just wanted to state for the benefit of the country that the debt anchor that the cabinet resolved on yesterday, currently as we speak, our debt to GDP ratio was at 62.7%. With this supplementary budget and this appropriations bill that we are moving today, that has come down now to 60% of GDP. And we are saying our desired and optimal debt to GDP level, we want to anchor it at 55%, so that whenever, as our economy grows, whenever you go above the 55% threshold, then something signals that things are not going all right, and we have to do something even as a house. Today, we are 9.14 trillion against the 10 trillion mark that we put, an absolute figure that basically, if you ask what is the basis of the 10 trillion shillings, is nothing, and it's just a figure. Therefore, it's good for all Kenyans, including those who write and commentate on economic matters, to at least have the courtesy and decency to engage with those who are in the know. And if they can't engage with the National Treasury, I'm sure there are also think houses, economic think houses in this house that they can engage with that would guide them to understand these things, other than misreport things that are misleading to Kenyans. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, allow me to support the passage of this appropriations bill and ask, like we did yesterday, Honorable Speaker, that upon the assent of this bill, that committees of this House, because we have now all been inducted into our work, especially the oversight committees, that we shall take up our work to oversight the implementation of this budget, to ensure that whatever we pass in this House is implemented by government in line with what was intended at the time we did this budget. Because it will not be enough to just say that we are the budget-making House, pass budgets, and leave it then to government ministries and departments to implement as they wish, without meaningful and useful oversight over the ministries. Lastly, Honorable Speaker, we did pass the report yesterday, and that report has certain recommendations. And as I did yesterday, I once again want to challenge our committees. Please go through that report. All the issues, including those issues on Article 223, please let us see our public accounts, public investments, and our departmental committees pick up all the issues that the Budget and Appropriations Committee has been very kind and courteous to guide us on with the recommendations that they have in that report. With those many remarks, Honorable Speaker, I beg to support.
Thank you. I promised you that I'll give to your leaders, then put the question. Honorable members, I now put the question that the Supplementary Appropriation Bill, National Assembly Bill number 4 of 2023, be now read the second time. As members of that opinion say aye. Aye. Will those of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Next order.
A bill for an act of parliament to authorize the issue of certain sums of money out of the consolidated fund and their application towards the service of the year ending on the 30th June 2020.
I think you should blame it on Honorable Bukose, who is constantly calling on the Speaker to put the question. Mover, reply briefly.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for that opportunity.
Yes.
And I implore upon Honorable Dr. Bukose to desist from confusing the Honorable Chair. Honorable Mr. Speaker, as I reply, I just wish to mention one thing that was mentioned by Honorable Opio Wadai, who is a very objective member of parliament, and doing his work in terms of oversight on the cost of electricity and power in this country. There are many considerations that we have to make as a country, as an economy, because the major part of the cost of power and the cost of energy is actually based on demand. When we increase our capacity to absorb extra capacity, currently we have installed capacity of around 3,000 megawatts. Mr. Speaker, for an economy to be able to access cheap power, we, number one, have to make mechanisms of increasing demand for power itself. And the reason I'm saying that, Mr. Speaker, is that when you produce less capacity, then in terms of per capita and in terms of per unit, then the cost goes high. If you compare our installed capacity of 3,000 megawatts with that, for example, of South Africa, South Africa has around 64 gigawatts of installed power. When you go to South Korea, it is around 120 gigawatts installed capacity. And therefore, the